Oh, here we are. Welcome back. Wake up! Wake up! Grab your Steam controllers. Plug them in. Fire up Overwatch. Earlier, speedylee asked me about my Overwatch config. And it makes a lot of sense that someone would ask that, because I talk a lot about it. I mean, pretty much my life evolves around it. So, I had to get it a little cleaned up. If you noticed, when I've been using it, it's kind of messy. I haven't labeled things very correctly. I mean, there's been times when it's been real nice and pristine. I even had images, icons for certain things. When I was using overlay, wheel, it's irrelevant. But the point is, I stopped putting any effort into that because I wasn't sharing them with anyone, which is a whole nother story, and I tweak things, I change things so much that it would get so annoying when you go and you label everything and then you change it. There would be certain functions that I wouldn't even want to move, even if they were terrible where they were, because the name was so long. I was just too lazy to retype it. So I just left it where it was. I know. So, after all these years though, using this config, most of the things are pretty dang dialed in. So, most of the fundamentals I'm not tweaking very much and I'm not messing with. Most of what I mess with now is sensitivities related to the gyro and the touchpad a little bit. Everything else is pretty, we've been at this for years and years, and some of these things are just so tested and tried and true, and other things are such terrible habits that I'm not interested in trying to overcome them. So, with a lot of it, it's not changing until the new Steam controller comes out. Fingers crossed. I know. Hopefully. Maybe. I don't know. But I've decided that I'm going to stop trying to solve certain problems because I just don't think that they are solvable until either action layers get fixed or there's a new Steam controller with additional buttons on the back. And it's not super relevant to Overwatch, but basically the big problem is crouch. I know. I have crouch set to the wheel click or the left pad click. I'm using that for WASD. I'm very, very particular about my left pad, my movement, and I like having run associated to this same pad, which makes sense because run, moving faster, moving. So run and crouch is sort of a modified movement, but it's really not, because crouch has nothing to do with movement. I mean, you move while you're crouching, sure, but it's not really a movement type necessarily. So I'm not really going to call that a movement function or a movement ability. Instead, I'm just going to call crouch a passenger without a seat, because this is not where he belongs. And many people, most people, who use spacebar, I've noticed, who use jump on their right grip, also use crouch on their left grip. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense. It's great. I used to do that. I loved it. It was fantastic. But the problem is, I would just end up running out of buttons for other things. So, the musical chairs, the musical buttons that ensues, ended up with me landing on using the left grip as a shift button, more or less. Ignore what it says right now. Button pad That's a different thing. I'll show you. But what this button is actually doing is it's allowing me to change up everything here, to add additional buttons here, additional button here, which I'm not using this game, but additional buttons here and additional buttons here, as well as, in this case, an additional function here. So I can have crouch here and have to find places to put all of those additional functions, or I can sacrifice crouch to give myself a shift key or a modifier key that I will designate to all these different buttons to increase my options. So that's the logic behind it. And I can understand how some people wouldn't want to do that. And I highly recommend that anyone who uses my config, try it the way it is. But if you're hitting a brick wall, by all means, change it. Because this is not based on what I feel is the most efficient. This is based on my bad habits. This is based on my hands, my muscle memory that may not necessarily be related to the Steam controller. My instinct, this is based on my instinct. So a lot of the sensitivities and a lot of the functions have to do with, like why I have melee here. I don't know why. It just makes sense for me, and that's where my finger goes when I go to hit melee. When I go to punch somebody, my finger goes there to the upper shoulder button, the upper right shoulder button, every time. And that's not necessarily the only place I've tried melee. Over the years, I've had melee everywhere, and that wasn't the first place that I put it either. I think a lot of console games, a lot of gamepad games use melee up there, perhaps, I think. I honestly don't know. But it would make sense. And me kind of landing on that kind of makes sense too, as to why they would put that there. Now, it is kind of unfortunate in a sense, because that means that I can't necessarily shoot and hit at the same time, since, I'm using one finger for both. I mean, I guess I could train myself to use two fingers here, but I don't know. It's a little inappropriate. So I'm not going to go there. Instead, I'm going to keep it as it is. I'm going to keep melee there. And other things, I have a reason. There's a reason for why everything is where it is. Not necessarily your reason, though. That's my point. So find your place. Experiment with what other people have done, for sure, because it helps get an idea for what's possible. But ultimately, at the end of the day, when you have your config and you're rocking and rolling at whatever game you're playing, be it Overwatch or whatever it is, that config is going to be modified and tailored to you. So know that and expect that. So going into it, don't think that you're going to find someone else's config and use it, and that's going to be what you're going to use. Ideally, that's not going to be the case, because everyone's going to have little different things about their hands and about how they do things. So go into it knowing that this is a project about modifying and tweaking the way you input into a game. Like, this is it's more than an input device. It's more like, because like the gyro and like the thoughtfulness that's required to tailor your config makes it more than just an input device. It's like an experience conduit. The Steam controller, that's what it is. And so by tailoring your config, you're really tailoring your experience and your ability to connect and engage with that. And so by fine-tuning certain things, like getting your gyro sensitivity and things like acceleration and all that kind of stuff really tuned to how your hands work, that's part of the process. That is part of using the Steam controller, is being mindful of, hey, should I do this a little differently? Oh, hey, you know what? I think if I lower this, then now when I use this weapon, it'll make that thing easier to pull off, or it'll make that combo you know, just more fun. And a lot of times, like, I would say be creative over being efficient. If you have an idea and it's like, this is weird and it's not super efficient, but it's weird, I wonder if it would work, do it. Always do it. There's times when I jump out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and I come in here because I have an idea of something really weird and it's not something I would ever use. And I won't use it, and I know I won't use it. But the idea is, can this do that? And then you put it all together and you're tweaking and it's not working and you're troubleshooting and you're figuring it out and you're making progress, and then you get it to work. And then you dial it in. And then it really does work. But it's terribly inefficient and you wouldn't be able to actually use that in real gameplay, so you get rid of it. But man, what an experience you had solving a problem and coming in here and fixing it. Related to gaming makes it even more interesting. And the fact that it's a controller just makes every bit of the effort inherently fun. It's extremely satisfying as well because you will see progress. As long as you don't stop, you will see progress. But don't bang your head against the wall. If something's not working, it's not working, and that's okay. And if it's different than the way I do it, that's okay. If you want to do things totally different, like experiment, really experiment. Because part of the thing with this controller is learning what all of the different functions do. So here's something that I hate, right? Mouse joystick. It's say you're playing a game and that game it's not compatible with mouse and keyboard while a gamepad is also working simultaneously. It doesn't accept simultaneous X input, gamepad input, and mouse and keyboard. There's a number of games that you'll run into that are like that if you look for them. And it can be annoying for some people because they want to move using the analog joystick, you know, or at least analog emulation, even if they're using that left touchpad. You know, they want to go to the left touchpad and they want to make the left touchpad joystick move and adjust all these dead zone settings and really fine tune it to be just like they like it. And I used to do that. I did used to do that. And when you do that, sometimes you run into these situations where you have to choose because the game will not work with both mouse input, so your right touchpad and your gyro, and joystick input. In those cases, your either analog stick or your left touchpad. And sometimes the games wig out. Sometimes one thing will stop working while the other thing works, and then vice versa. Sometimes nothing works. Sometimes things are just off and weird. And sometimes it's just a no-go at all. And honestly, my recommendation, if this is kind of a problem, is to not even deal with mouse-like joystick. Just don't even use the analog joystick emulation. Don't rely on it, is what I'll say. Use it, and there's certain instances where it's absolutely better than WASD keyboard emulation, like I'm using here. There are times when it's better, and it's good to be familiar with it. I'm really glad that I used it for the time that I did, because I became really familiar with the different functions and how they worked and all the different settings, and it became obvious, okay, here's how to dial it in. Because sometimes you're just gonna need to dial something in. You know, like you can't just select from the drop down and go mouse, okay, done. You know, no. That's like step one, is selecting the function, and then you're gonna go and you're gonna tweak all your settings. And unfortunately, the configurator here doesn't allow you to copy and paste, you know, functions from one config to another, or from one section of a config or layer to another. It's it really sucks. And when I was really into making configs, I wouldn't even mess with the configurator. I would use Notepad++, and I would edit all of the VCF files or whatever it is manually. And it became actually way easier to do big configs. But that's when I was doing configs that had huge action sets and layers, really big ones, and a totally different approach than what I have now. And in those kinds of projects and those kinds of configs, you will end up hating this configurator because it's just, I mean, it does what it needs to do, but you'll see. There's just little things that kind of like bother you from a usability standpoint. But my point, so mouse-like joystick is what you do, is what you use if your game only accepts gamepad or keyboard and mouse, and you really want to use that gamepad emulation. You really want to use that joystick emulation so that you can, I mean, you got a big touchpad here, right? So there's a lot of space for you to move your thumb. That's a lot of dynamics. That's a large range of movement, right? So if you're doing actual analog movement in the game and you move a little bit from center, then your character is moving slowly. And you can move a little more, move more quickly, and move to the very outer edge, and now you're running, you know? That makes a lot of sense. But if you play a lot of shooters, and a lot of online games, and if you're coming from mouse and keyboard, you'll notice that, and you'll be like, wow, this is actually kind of nice, being able to walk slowly. Warframe is a great example of a game that it feels really good to have that on. But here's the problem. It will greatly inhibit your movement ability if you're coming from mouse and keyboard, I think. It has with everyone that I've talked to who didn't expect this, and I didn't expect it. So if you're a dork like me, you might run into some issues. And here's why. Because when you're emulating a joystick, it's emulating your movement, right? From one end all the way to the other end. If you were, say, swiping, right? Now, going from left to right, full bore, is going to be that distance. It's going to require that much movement of your finger to go from one side to the other. Now imagine you wanted to, you're shooting and there's an enemy down there and you don't want to get shot, but you're trying to take them out. And so on a keyboard, you would be hitting A and D, and you'd be moving like back and forth, you know, like good friggin' luck doing that over here when you're having to slide I mean, you could put your finger in the middle and just move it a little bit, but because you're doing emulation of an analog stick, it's only going to be moving a tiny bit. So that's going to be useless. You're going to have to be throwing your thumb from the left to the right like crazy to actually be able to achieve what you can achieve on a keyboard by just tapping A and D, like real fast. So that's why I ended up not using joystick emulation in most cases. And I say most cases because I mostly play online shooters. So if you don't play a lot of those kinds of games where that kind of thing matters, then you may never even need to use WASD on here, unless, like I was saying, you run into that mouse issue. So what I have here for movement, WASD on a direction pad, you want to turn requires click off for sure, because you don't want to have to be clicking this damn thing to be able to move. The whole point of this Steam controller is very little physical exertion. You're not going to have sore thumbs at the end of a long play session. I mean, you may if you're like being weird or something, but it's such a comfortable controller. And with the touchpads, they're capacitive, right? So you don't have to push hard at all. Like, not at all. You can just barely rest your fingers on there. And if you get like real hardcore, I did this for years. I got Band-Aids, you know, like those like cloth ones, and I would cut off, you know, like the like the bandage part, and I would just take the sticky parts and I would put the sticky part over my thumb, you know, just right there on my thumbs. And it makes them just like butter across these dudes. Oh, it's so fast. It is so responsive. I love it so much. But it's just a pain to have to deal with little freaking Band-Aids and taping shit in your fingers and stuff all the time. So I don't do that anymore. But I wouldn't be opposed to it. If I had a box of Band-Aids right here, right now, they'd be all over my friggin' thumbs. Because it's nice. It's real nice. And that's another thing. Keep your pads clean. You know, alcohol wipes, It work real good. Keep it all clean, because and this really matters even more than, I mean, I guess it's kind of like the bottom of your mouse, right? Keep the bottom of your mouse clean and keep your mouse pad clean so you can move it, you know? So your thumb is like your mouse, and that's like your mouse pad, so you want to keep it all clean. And always wash your hands, you know, before you use your Steam controller, because if you get them like real dirty, then those pads, like they like, you know, you feel it in your thumb and it makes a difference, especially when there's certain spots. If you spill your soda and you get a little drop, just one little drop on it in one spot, you're moving your thumb over, oh, it's the most annoying thing in the world. But anyway, back on the D-pad. So on this D-pad, WASD, and notice this, the layout, we have it set to 8-way with overlap. I'm sure if you think about what that means, it'll make all the sense in the world. Overlap region. Also, I'm not going to read all of these descriptions to you. There's descriptions for everything. Do your due diligence and read all the things as you go. Try and understand what you're looking at. If you'll feel overwhelmed and some things just freaking don't make any sense. But that's okay, because it will make sense in practice and it will come to you in time. And dead zone. Lower the dead zone all the way. That's what I always say. By lowering the dead zone all the way in this case, on this WASD movement thing, means that I can just have my finger in the middle and I can just easily move it back and forth to move, you know, like if I'm like trying to shoot and I'm trying to dodge and all that. So that's why the dead zone is all the way down. You know, I mean, you don't have to make it all the way down. You could bring it up a little bit. You could probably bring it up to maybe here, or maybe here, and have your thumb resting right in the center, so that you barely have to like rock your thumb to the left and the right, up and down, to be able to move. But then you could, you know, like position it right in the center again to sort of like be stationary. You can play with that if you like it. I don't want it up there. I don't like that. So. WASD, you know, that all makes sense. On click action, because remember we have requires click off, which means we're just going to be touching our thumb. It's resting our thumb on this touchpad to be performing these functions. But if at any point, at any area on the touchpad, in any quadrant, if you click down on the touchpad, you'll feel that a little click. And in this config, it will do the shift ability. I mean, you know, like it's relative to whatever character you have. The reason I have it here is because Farah, Ash, Lucio, Soldier 76, those were like a lot of the main characters that I played when initially setting up this, and they all have these movement abilities, and I like putting movement abilities or running, you know, like I said earlier, like putting that stuff, you know, under the touchpad where movement is. Having it all under movement makes sense for my hands. It makes sense in action, in practice. And then this is where I have that kind of compromised crouch. So you squeeze left grip, which again, left grip is our modifier key. It's our shift key. So shift, click, your crouch. I almost never use this in Overwatch. It's not a great place for it. And eventually, when the new Steam controller comes out, assuming we have more buttons on the back, I'll have a shift button on the rear right grip, and then the crouch button will be either below it or above it. If there's two back there, this is what I'm hoping so badly. And that'll be really fun. That'll make a lot of sense. So on the mouse, all right, I'm not going to go through like every single thing on here because I'm going to share this. I'm going to put this in the chat, in the Tricom, and you guys can download it and you can open it up. And you're going to have to use Glosk. Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's not a problem. I mean, Steam controller is a project. All right. If you're just trying to use the Steam controller so you can get to your game, it's going to be a barrier. It's going to be frustrating. If you're incorporating the Steam controller as an interesting element to enhance your game, it's going to change your life. So, but it depends on which angle you're coming from. And so because Overwatch is not a Blizzard game or not a Steam game, there's a few hoops that you have to jump through to get it to work. And the easiest of all is just using a program called Glosk. And I'll show you how to. I'll do something. I'll figure out a way. I'll post a video or something. There's a lot of good resources already out there on this stuff, so I don't want to rehash it all. So you install Glosk, and then you use Glosk to add, a non-Steam game to your Steam library. But when you use Glosk to do it, it creates a new association with the Steam overlay and the Steam controller. So basically, it launches that overlay all by itself, and it tricks the computer or it tricks Steam into thinking that whatever you put into Glosk is running. So right now, Steam thinks Overwatch is running, but if I closed Overwatch, Steam would still think Overwatch is running, because Glosk, the Overwatch instance of Glosk or the Glosk instance of the Overwatch overlay, is still running independently. So, and there's other ways you can do this, but the way I do it, which is just the fastest, it's not the cleanest or the sexiest, but it's the fastest. You make it in Glosk. You don't associate it with an exe or a shortcut. You just make it, point it to nothing, and then you launch it, and then you launch it in Steam as if you're launching a game, and then nothing happens, and then you launch Overwatch like normal, and it works. Some people hate this, and I understand. They just want to be able to launch their damn games from their damn library and have it work, and you can do that. There's things that you can do with certain. There's a BNet launcher, which is one that comes to mind. That's what I used for the longest time, and it works really well. I think there's other ways of getting it to work, Overwatch. And then when it comes to games like Origin games, certain ones you can just add, certain ones you have to do funny workarounds. And I used to kind of like try and find and troubleshoot the solution for every specific game I wanted to add. And sometimes you would have a different solution for every damn game, and it would get really frustrating. And I'm talking about non-Steam games, by the way. So most games, you're going to be fine. But those non-Steam games, and the thing is, like, I don't know. Personally, I just wouldn't recommend you figure out all the hoops to jump through to add every single game, non-Steam game to Steam. Just do the Glosk way. Do it how I'm saying. Experiment with it, of course. I mean, it depends on your experience, right? What you're trying to do. But I don't know. It just, I think about all the hours that I spent getting all the, and then you restart or you reformat, and then everything's gone again. It's like, and I do this kind of stuff like, I don't know. I mess with stuff so much that it gets annoying when you spend a lot of time cleaning up something, making it super nice, making everything launch right, and then you change a hard drive, and before you know it, you're reinstalling Windows and you're upgrading this thing, and now you go to launch the game. Oh, and you can't because, oh yeah, I added that thing through the thing. Oh, and I added a custom thumbnail. And where did I? Okay, and I gotta figure all that. It's just too much. So then doing it with Glosk has just been a lifesaver. I don't even think about it. I don't Google how to get the game work with this team. Nothing. I just add the thing with Glosk, and I don't even tell Glosk where the exe is. I don't do any of that, and I just launch it on Steam. And then the overlay comes up, and then I just launch my game like that. Just like you would normally out of a launcher. So, I don't know. There's definitely arguments to be made. And if it's something that drives you crazy, by all means, there are workarounds and ways to get almost every game that I've experienced into Steam to launch just like a Steam game without having to launch anything separately. But if you don't mind just launching one thing separately, and then running your game, the Glosk way will save you a lot of time and a lot of headache. I promise. That's what I'm doing with this. So, the overlay that you see right now, actually, you know what? The game it kicked me out, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and we'll go exit to desktop. Now, where is it at? So, as you see, like down here in the taskbar, this Glosk overlay, win, blah, blah, blah. That's the thing. That's Glosk. So here's my overlay. And even though it looks like I'm on my desktop, right? I am on my desktop. But my config is not my desktop config. It's my Overwatch config because this overlay, this is running. And this overlay, this little shortcut is called Overwatch. So Steam thinks it's Overwatch. It doesn't know. It's not actually related to the Overwatch executable whatsoever. It could be called anything. It's just the fact that I launch that first and then I launch the game. That's what makes it, Overwatch. So here's what I do. Here's what I would, how I get everything to launch. So I have my Overwatch. Where is it? I have Overwatch right here. It's a non-Steam game. And I say play. The overlay pops up. My config all, changes. Sensitivities change. I feel it all. It's weird. And now I just go launch Overwatch from the Blizzard launcher, and it works like a charm. And so here's the another thing that you'll have to be aware of with non-Steam games, and I think it's all of them, but you have to run it in windowed, borderless, windowed mode. You can't run it in full screen. I mean, you can, and most of the time I do, but not on a game where I'm tweaking the Steam controller. So you want to run it in windowed mode of some sort when you're tweaking your config, because as we explained, this overlay is a separate program, right? Running. And if your game is running full screen, then when you pull up the overlay, this will open, but it will open behind your game. And you'll be wondering, wait, what happened? Why can't I control anything? How come I hear the Steam sounds? Where's what's going on? And it's because this is open behind your game, and you can Alt-Tab to it and make your tweaks, and then Alt-Tab back to the game. Sometimes the game doesn't full screen after you do that. It can be, you definitely don't want to be doing that when you're making a lot of changes to your config, because it'll just be annoying and time consuming. It takes a lot of time to switch back for some reason. All right, so jumping into the practice range, I wanted to go back over here to the mouse. So some of the important things to be aware of is things like sensitivity. As you can see, it looks like I have it super sensitive, right? But what I do is I keep it very, very high sensitivity in the config, and then in the game, I lower the sensitivity. And almost as much as possible, I like to, I really wouldn't want to bring my sensitivity in here any higher than this. So if I wanted it more sensitive, I would just increase the in-game sensitivity. I think I currently have the in-game mouse sensitivity for Overwatch at like 7. Is that right? Yeah. I think that's right. Well, we'll look in a minute. And what that does is some games, I would notice that there would be sort of like this jitteriness, this jittering when I would move my mouse around. Very annoying. Very, very annoying. And this fixed it. By putting this over here, by doing sensitivity over here, rather than doing sensitivity mainly in the game, having it up, it's almost like it's almost like, it's essentially what you do to your mouse, right? On your computer mouse. You would turn up the sensitivity on the mouse so that your mouse is receiving and reading more data, and then controlling the sensitivity in the game, or like on your computer. The idea is it's dealing with a larger amount of data, and it's smoother. There's more degrees in there. So this is that same sort of concept, and it makes a huge difference. I haven't played a lot with it lower than this. You see that line down there under the S? That's the default. It's so bad. I don't know. Not bad, but just for the games that I was playing, it made such a huge world of difference. There was a time where there was certain games I was like, oh, you can't play that game with a Steam controller. You can, but it's like super jittery for some reason. And this fixed it. So may not be the fix for everything, but It is certainly the fix for a lot of jittery mouse camera movements. So lower that in-game sensitivity and then raise your Steam controller sensitivity. Also, rotation is a big one. I was so much happier when I raised this rotation. And basically, it's like it's rotating your touchpad, right? Think of it like rotating your mouse. You know, like your horizontal. If your horizon stayed the same, but you were to like rotate your mouse, that would adjust like your the horizontal would be like up and down. It makes more sense when you think about it without me talking about it. So I won't talk about it because you already understand what it is. But increase it and experiment. Increase it, put it all the way up, mess around, play, look around, and then put it way down, mess around, and then go a little bit up. Keep going until it's like, oh, that's comfortable. That's good. Okay, yeah. It'll be good. Trackball mode, I turned that motherfucker off because who needs it? I thought I liked that trackball mode, and I do on the desktop. And in a lot of like cursor-based games, that trackball mode is great. But in first-person shooters, nah. Because you'll build the muscle memory for spinning, for like flicking and spinning and then stopping, dropping your thumb back down on that touchpad. You'll build the muscle memory for that. And you'll get real good. And you'll be like, man, oh, look how good I am at that. And then someone will point out how much more mental effort you're having to exert to do this spin. How much is spinning? Oh, here, stop. Even though you're not, like, obviously it's muscle memory. And then you'll experiment and you'll be like, well, what do you mean? And then they'll say, well, why not just make it so one flick is right behind you? It's like where you want to go. So then you don't have to time a stop. You just flick and then you're there. Well, I don't know is what you're going to say. And you'll try it. And you'll be like, holy shit. He was right. That's way better. So if you want to save time with that whole thing playing out, turn off trackball mode and give it a shot. And you might like it, especially if you're not coming from using trackball mode on here. Like if you don't have any, like, yeah, I mean, I used it for a while and I beat a number of games using it, and I was pretty proud of my muscle memory related to that trackball. And turning it off has just made things so very much better. So much better for shooters. Of course, this is all relevant to the kinds of games you see me playing. I mean, it's really just, I should just make it all relevant to Overwatch. But, all right. So vertical scale sensitivity, we lower that. Don't have to. Sometimes I don't lower it. I think on my gyros, I raise it. That's one of those things. Play with it. Then mouse dampening. This is a pretty important one. Basically, it modifies your sensitivity based on whatever the parameters are right here. You can use that. I use it. You can also achieve the same thing right here using mode shifting. I'm essentially achieving the same thing. So that this dampens my mouse sensitivity, right? Well, over here, this obviously lowers a great deal my mouse sensitivity, as you can see. When I full pull the left trigger. So with, no dampening over here. Acceleration is high on this one. So there's, I guess, kind of 3 different sensitivity levels for the touchpad. You have your main base sensitivity right here. Then you have your dampened sensitivity when you're soft / or full pulling the left trigger. And then you have your 3rd level of sensitivity right here. When you're full pulling, when you're full pulling the left trigger, it goes here. When you're soft pulling, it goes here. And when you're normal, it's right here. So, and this isn't your sensitivity, it's the amount of dampening. So that's not the sensitivity level, that's the amount of dampening that we're applying to this sensitivity level, just so that makes sense. So haptics, I turn off, turn these on, experiment with them. A lot of people like them. I do not like them. I like them as sort of tools to understand what's going on. So if I'm trying to troubleshoot something, I'll use haptics. I'll put haptics on that function if I'm wondering whether or not a function is firing. That way when I feel the haptics, I'll know it's firing. And if I don't feel them, then I'll know it's not. But I don't like really feeling them all the time on my touchpad. Am I using them here? I can't remember. I don't even remember if I'm using them here. This wouldn't bother me too much, I don't think, but I don't even think I am there. I don't know. I do use haptics on my triggers because I do soft pull for firing, and which is for me is another game changer. It's another important one. I put a medium haptic on there, soft pull to fire, and I have a very low threshold. So I only have to pull it teeny tiny bit for it to fire, and that's kind of what you want when you think about it, you know. So the further that your finger has to travel, the longer it takes for it to, you know, issue the command. And then under here, this is a common thing that I do in all my configs, is any abilities or grenades or things like that, I put under the right trigger. So in the abilities in this game, the E ability is usually some sort of like, well, for like the characters that I'm doing, you know, projectile things. And I usually put them here. And with Ash, this is her TNT. It's super important to me to have that right there, right next to fire. The way I get to this, as you see, is left grip. So that modifier, that left grip shift button. I squeeze that and then I fire. She throws her TNT. At the same time, I release that left grip, I fire, and I shoot the TNT. Same trigger. I don't have to move any fingers. I don't have to move any thumbs. It's just everything is right where it needs to be. Boom, and it works. It feels good. Now, over here, this is where things get a little bit tricky and where I'm going to walk you through some settings in the game that will need to be changed for this config to work. Now, a good Steam controller config is maybe one that doesn't require you to change any of the default, you know, functions in a game. And I understand that. And I spent a lot of time trying to always not have to change any of the in-game settings. But for some things, you have to. And then when you start looking at the Steam controller creatively, then you start doing things creatively. And you realize there's a lot of ways that you can fundamentally change the way a game plays by changing the buttons that you have access to. And a lot of games give you access to all sorts of functions that you don't expect. You just have to map them. They're available. And when you think about how you can stack functions, how you can apply certain things and do certain things, you could end up changing the way a game plays. And I feel like that's what I've achieved with not Overwatch, with Warframe. Warframe is a different game for me on a Steam controller than it is on a mouse and keyboard. There's things that I'm doing on a Steam controller that I never did and I couldn't do on a mouse and keyboard. And that's one of the beautiful things, but it's also one of the things that can turn a lot of people off to certain configs like mine, because they require a lot of additional stuff to make them work. And then someone's like, well, why not just use one of these other configs that basically emulates a gamepad and everything's already mapped, and then all your in-game button prompts are all correct? Yeah, but then just go use a gamepad. Or I don't like, to me, the point is not to make it the most compatible with the game's user interface. That's not what I'm after. I'm after making the controller most compatible with how I play the game. So this is one of the reasons why I don't put my configs on Steam, and I used to share more of my configs, and I used to put them out there on Reddit and all these, Discords and stuff like that, and I don't anymore, because a lot of times you just get people saying, hey, why not just use a joystick? Oh, well, and then you write a big thoughtful response, and it's like, well, you should just use a joystick. And Or people say, well, hey, Microsoft spent $11 billion researching gamepads. I think that they know the best way to lay it out, so you should just do it that way. And I got tired of having to defend my reasoning for things, because my point is not that the way I'm doing it is the best. It's just I'm dumb, my thumbs are dumb, and this Steam controller has allowed me to have fun with games using a gamepad where before my dumb hands are too dumb to do well. And this is how I'm able to pull fun out of video games in 2020. Take that for what it is. I'm not telling anyone else how to do it. And really, this isn't even the best way to do it. It's not even the best way for me to do it. It's just where I'm at right now. It's progress. Progressive. It's a progressive progress. Process. And it's fun. That's the most important part, is it's fun. So even when you're frustrated, even when one function is bothering you, there's always going to be another function that you're just kind of proud of. That you're like, you know what? I may not be landing those Twitch shots, but I really like my VoIP control. I really like my touchpad settings, and it's so weird to be care about things like that, but it's true. You end up, if you put a lot of time into it, then into anything, you're going to become overly attached to it. But, what's crazy to me is that you're better at shooting that TNT with the Steam controller than I am with a mouse. I don't believe that, sarcastic warlock. I think that you're just being nice. But I appreciate the sentiment, because you are good and you've been using a mouse longer than I've been using a Steam controller, and you're really good. So, but I appreciate it. And here's the thing. I would say with confidence that I am better with a Steam controller than I was with a mouse and keyboard. But here's the problem with that statement. I'm not going to test it. I won't. I refuse. And I'm curious. Oh, God, am I curious? Am I so fucking curious to just sit down with a mouse and a keyboard and play a damn game and just see what happens? Not because I'm not because I'm want to do that, but I want to know what happens. But here's the problem. What if I'm way fucking better with a mouse and keyboard? Way better than I am with the Steam controller. That's gonna suck, because the Steam controller is more fun. So I'm not gonna stop using it, but I'm gonna use it and know in the back of my head that I'm actually way better with a mouse and keyboard. That would be soul crushing. And as it is now, I truly feel like I'm better with this. That's it. That's enlightenment. Is me feeling, not just feeling, but having the assurance. Whether it's right or wrong doesn't matter. I'm living under the perception that I am substantially better with this, and I'm purely convinced of it. But I'm going to avoid being proven wrong, because I'd rather live my life in this delusion that this is making me better. Why? Because it is undoubtedly making me have more fun. And that is a crusade that I am willing to crusade together with my Steam controller and you. So let's continue. We're going to look at one more thing before we jump into Overwatch and go over some of the in-game bindings that we're going to have to change. It's not a lot, but it's more than you're expecting. The gyro. Now, most of these things that I'm talking to you about are this is not purely related to Overwatch. A lot of this stuff carries over through all of my configs and will carry over from all of your experiences, and all of these particular things that I'm highlighting are things that you will in time become very familiar with. And I kind of want to highlight them so that you kind of know where are the good investments. Don't waste a lot of time with the shoulder buttons. They suck. So you just, use them for whatever you need to do with them, but you're not going to spend hours and hours and hours on your shoulder buttons trying to figure out, like it ain't going to happen. Your gyro, you're going to spend a lot of time in there tweaking, and it's going to be fun. I don't dread any of this shit, which is surprising considering how much frustration has been associated, and not frustration with the controller as much as frustration with the concept, like with what you're trying to do, with trying to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to go for. There's frustration involved. It's almost like building a puzzle, right? But you're always making progress. Just don't fuck around with action layers, because you'll lose your mind. Don't get me started on the action layers, you guys. I can't talk about them. It's a whole thing. I will say, one day action layers are going to work, and they're going to be reliable, and they're going to be consistent, and every time you fire into them, they're going to fire off, and every time you fire out of them, they're going to go the hell away instantly, like magic. It's going to happen, and when that happens, it will unlock so many potential options. So much. I'm telling you, so much. We're gonna do entire live streams that are nothing but messing with action layers and just getting weird with it, because you can get real weird with action layers, man. You can get real weird. Oh, I can't wait to show you guys. But anyway, what was I talking about? Fundamentals. So the fundamentals. Gyro is a fundamental thing. You're going to spend a lot of time with it. You're going to have a lot of fun with it. It's the tree to be barking up. Don't waste your time with things like the analog stick. It is what it is. Whatever. But your gyros, your touchpads, your triggers, these things are going to you're going to become intimate with. So your gyro is going to be very similar to your touchpad in terms of your mouse function. It's going to have a lot of the same functions, a lot of the same settings. Acceleration, if you watched, I think it was last night or maybe the night before, I was experimenting with this. And I was turning it on my base gyro layer. And I never use it on my base gyro layer, ever. But I turned it on the other day, made sensitivity adjustments, made some tweaks, and ended up doing a lot better. I did change it, like, in the middle of the match, because it was messing, like, certain muscle memory twitches were just not landing, and I was like, okay, I have to turn this off right now. But then I turned it back on later, and I adjusted the sensitivity a little more, and I started playing a little more mindfully, and it is so much better. Better. It's a weird word. It is so nice right now. I am so greatly enjoying the experience of having acceleration turned on high on my base config or on my base gyro. And I would recommend, don't be afraid of it. I was terribly afraid of acceleration. Oh, acceleration. No. Ugh. It's like motion blur. I used to be so afraid of motion blur. And yeah, not so much anymore in many cases. Digital Foundry, thank you for enlightening me to the beauties of good motion blur in games. Triggered, yeah. So I mean, this is dampening, as you can see. This is the same type of dampening that you have on the touchpad for the mouse, but this is going to be very different. You're not going to apply the same thing. This is very much going to depend on how you play the game and how you have your buttons mapped. On my config, and playing as I do as Ash, or, well, let's just use Ash, because this is all basically built for Ash. So when you soft pull the left trigger, Ash will aim down sights. And when that happens, I don't want this, because this sensitivity is actually much higher than it looks, because this acceleration is set to high. So I don't want that high of a sensitivity when she's aiming down sights. So I have a little bit of dampening, right? A little bit of dampening. Left trigger, soft pull. So ADS, dampen that gyro a little bit. Dampen it, right? And then there's full pull. So you probably heard me talk all the time about full pull, soft pull, full pull. Usually what I'm talking about is about my gyro sensitivity. So as you can see, we're going to have 3 levels of gyro sensitivity. We have our base gyro sensitivity right here with acceleration on high. Then when we're ADS, when we're aiming down sights, when we're soft pulling that left trigger, it's going to dampen a little bit. It's going to slow down a little bit. Not a lot though, not a lot. I mean, it's still very fast. You can aim down sights and really just like twitch around, and yeah, it's not too slow. That's what full pull is. So when you full pull the left trigger, nothing happens visually. She's still aiming down sights. Nothing changes there, but things change. Things change quite a bit. You'll notice the sensitivity increased, right? Acceleration is on high, sensitivity is increased. Haptics are now on low. Previously, we weren't feeling any haptics. So for the most part, you got no haptics on the controls outside of firing your weapon until you full pull that left trigger. Then you go into a precision aim mode, for lack of a better term. That gyro, your gyro settings change. Your haptics turn on to let you know, hey, you're in precision aim mode. And if you look over here, your sensitivity vertical scale is higher. That's weird. But I'm telling you, I friggin' love it. Having that vertical sensitivity scale set higher when I'm full pulling is really nice. I find my up and down jitter in my hands to be less problematic than my left and right jitter in my hands, which is strange because you think left and right would be more stable because the way hands are, horizontally, like but no, I don't understand any of these things. I'm just telling you the way it feels, and it feels so good to have that vertical scale sensitivity higher. Meaning, in action, as I'm playing the game, and I'm shooting a dude, and he's jumping up, I can easily track him up. And then when I'm trying to like aim at his head, I'm not overshooting and stuff. So even though I could go up and find him real quickly, I can still like fine tune. I mean, you get it. But mess with it, because it's one of those really particular things, and I don't think it'll work in a lot of games. If you're playing a game where there's a lot of recoil that you have to compensate for, pulling your mouse down while you're shooting, right? Doing that whole thing. Turn that vertical sensitivity scale up like here, or even higher. Now all of a sudden, you're not going left and right, like trying to like shoot your dude on, because your sensitivity is lower and your vertical sensitivity is higher, basically making your horizontal sensitivity lower, meaning you're not moving left and right trying to shoot your target, but you can easily go down with your gyro to adjust for the recoil in your gun easily without like jittering yourself. Because with a mouse, if you were to have your sensitivity set for the optimal sensitivity to compensate for recoil, that sensitivity would not necessarily be the most optimal horizontal recoil or horizontal sensitivity. So being able to tune all of those different levels of sensitivity, and again, it's specific to the game and it's specific to how you play the game. Because if you're like, say you're a Lucio, this would be really bad to have on your base gyro layer, on your base gyro sensitivity with an increased vertical scale, because he's going to be turning a lot, and you wouldn't want him to be faster looking up and down than he is left and right. That would be really annoying. And it would be annoying pretty much as any character for the most part. The reason it works here is because this is on a full pull. It's not on the base layer. It's not even on the soft pull ADS layer. It's on the full pull layer. And the idea is these dual stage triggers help you feel when you're on the soft pull and where the full pull bump is. And by kind of, it's one of the hard things, and I think it might be, I'm not sure if it's easier for a person who's coming from a gamepad or easier for a person coming from a mouse. But for me, it's hard to soft pull. Like, it's not hard. Like, I mean, I could do it for days. It's not hard, but it's hard to soft pull when you're in the heat of battle. So for me, that was probably one of the biggest things that I had to work on, was just calming down. And even still, it's like, oh, calm down, just relax, soft pull. Like, the game could be intense, but I don't, like, the controller doesn't need to feel how intense things are through my hands. You know, like, I need to be transferring, like, peace and calm and joy to the controller, not like aggression, you know, because, like, this controller does not work well. And I'm not, like, speaking esoterically. I mean seriously, because you have these grip buttons. If you're squeezing the controller hard, you're not going to be very dexterous to be able to fire off on those grip buttons, right? You need to let the controller rest in your hand. If you're really tense, your thumb is not going to be able to float smoothly over this touchpad like it needs to. You're going to have a hard time moving your thumb when your thumb is like it is on a gamepad. For me, at least, when I play a gamepad, my hands can be pretty tense, and I kind of tense up down here. And I end up getting kind of sore down here with traditional gamepads. So, but over here, that never, ever, ever happens to me anymore. But it used to, because I used to play with, like, my hand tensed, you know, like right in here. And doing that just makes everything worse. It makes you slower. It makes it harder to use the controller. And the same thing with those soft touch dual stage triggers. It makes it harder to be precise with your soft pulls and your full pulls when you're just like, you know, like slamming into things. So there's a lot of functions that you can take advantage of if you can be kind of consistent and reliably fire off your soft versus your full pull. Because you can go from having one button to having 4 buttons. You introduce a mode shift or a, you know, like what we're doing here with this back button, using a mode shift button, and now you have 8 buttons, you know, like, or more, really. There's so much that you can do. So you may run into things where you gotta just have one function on the triggers because your fingers are they're full pulling every time, and it's just not working out. That's okay. What I say is, don't try and win that battle first. Get used to other things, because it really does get in the way. Like, if there's too much cognitive load and you're trying to remember too many different things, you know, the soft pull, the one, and the full pull, and then the gyro goes with the thing, and then I got to move my thumb like, it could get really overwhelming, you know? So definitely don't jump into, like, a high pressure game, and definitely don't jump into it thinking, oh, let's see how good I am in this game. Like, that's not it. It's more like, let's see how much fun this puzzle is to build. Let's learn how to complete a Rubik's Cube. You know, like, that's the approach. It's not like, oh, let me get a Rubik's Cube and see how fast I can beat it. No, you're not going to be able to. You're going to have to figure out how and learn how. And then you'll have to take time, and then you'll have to memorize things, and then you'll be able to do it. That's how it is with this. I would say that this is easier than a Rubik's Cube, though, because I still can't figure out that witchcraft. All right, I think it's time for us to jump into the game. There's a lot of other things. There's a lot of things that you can do here to make menu navigation easier, and things like A and B. You know, I have A as the A button because Enter is, what is it? Enter pulls up the chat. So I do gamepad A. And actually what I could do is just do space and then everything is, not using any gamepad functions. I don't think, unless these are. Are these gamepad? No. All right, so let me see. Let's export. We'll go new personal. We'll call this one 3.0. Oh, also, this is the Steam controller keyboard. It's kind of it's weird, but it's kind of great. And you can modify the config for the Steam controller keyboard separately from any of your other configs, and you can do some really interesting things. Real quick with mine, I can go Ryker's over. It's waking out. Overwatch. 3.0. You can do stuff like, so if I hit a letter, if I soft pull on the letter, it does the letter. If I full pull on the letter, it does the letter and then a space. If I full pull and hold, oh, it doesn't do it. It's not doing it now. What was it? Oh, it's not doing it anymore. All right, I need to update this because I've got a really, really good keyboard config for this thing, and it's amazing. But yeah, I haven't messed with it in a long time, and I think I need to update some things. But yeah, we'll do that one day in a video. Okay, so we're going to. Oh. Let's select Ash.
My rules.
So here's the settings that you're gonna need to change. And actually, here's what we'll do. I'm just gonna go. Oh, this is crazy. Yep, restore defaults. Yep. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do. Working from default, we are going to lower our sensitivity to 7. Don't worry about your controller settings. We're not using any of those. Your reticle, you can make that, whatever you want. And in my case, I'm actually going to make it nothing. And then, all right, so crouch. For crouch, I like a toggle crouch. I'm a toggle crouch guy myself. So I like to toggle that guy. Now, things are going to get interesting. Things are definitely going to get interesting because here's the thing. Secondary fire. Secondary fire is sometimes a fire. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a jump. For Farah, it's her jetpack. You hold down the jump button to use the jetpack. So it's not really a secondary fire. With Ash, it's aim down sights. But with Soldier 76, it's fire missiles. So these are all so very, very, very different functions. And the game is designed to give you default buttons for all those functions, and you can use them. And you can, people that play with a mouse and keyboard, most people maybe most people don't change their key bindings. I've always been a key binding changer guy. So I've kind of carried that with me from mouse and keyboard into Steam controller land, and I change everything. So I change a lot of this stuff, and I change everything for every character I play. So that's kind of why it's why my configs aren't like a universal sort of thing, because you can't pull it in. Like if you pulled my config in and you started using a different character that maybe I'm not familiar with, which is most of them, you might find it not work at all. Like there might be things that don't work at all just because of certain functions or abilities or ways of Ash's movement or weapons that don't translate to other people's, and my config is purely tailored, well, not purely, but very much tailored for Ash's tools, skill set or whatever. So secondary fire is going to be a thing that we're going to change probably, but we're not going to change it yet. We're going to leave it here. We're going to leave this stuff as it is for now. Because if you look over here, we have aim down sights, which is the right mouse button, and then we have secondary fire, which is this equals button next to backspace on the number row. Interesting, eh? That's under a full pull. Full pull. Different function. What's up with that? Well, let me show you. I will show you. So, I'm going to leave these there for all them. What else? We're going to need to change. We're going to need to change the UI button. You don't need to do this. This is just for me. Change it to that. And then I'm going to change the push to talk button. Change it to that. Perfect. All right, now for the most part we're done with this part. Now we're going to go into Ash. Now this is all again relative to like here as you use, but follow along, like understand what I'm doing with Ash, and it'll make sense how it will affect other heroes. So Ash's secondary fire is aim down sights. So that's where we want it, right? On that right mouse button, because our left trigger is soft pull right mouse button. ADS. So that's perfect. Now, let's see. If we go to Farah. Now, Farah has her secondary fire, which, like I said, was actually here. Let me show Farah to you because everything is built and tailored sort of around Ash. The functions don't need to be changed much. The keyboard shortcuts don't need to be changed much for Ash because it's built around her. But any of the other characters, you'll probably need to change. A lot of them, not all of them. Pretty much it's like ADS or non-ADS, So any non-ADS character, you will have to change. So when we, let's see. Oh, you'll find these functions inside the Steam controller config, but to access the hero selection screen, it's under mode shift, which is left grip. So you squeeze the left grip, and then you hit X on the face buttons. So left grip X or shift X. So we'll select Farah.
I will protect the innocent.
And when I pull my left trigger, soft pull, which for Ash would be aim down sights, which is our right mouse button, Farah flies. When I jump, Farah jumps and then flies. So it's kind of redundant to have it on the left trigger. Now, her E ability is this little grenade dude.
Move back.
See that? Kind of cool. Now, the way it's set up right now is E is on my trigger. So when I soft pull my trigger, I'm gonna fire a rocket. When I shift soft pull my trigger, when I squeeze the left grip and soft pull, I'm gonna fire my little grenade thing. And that would be great, except the way I play Farah, I will use that thing a lot to get out of the way, to move. I use it more as like a movement thing than anything else. So I don't want it on my trigger, because here's what I do. I'll spin around and I'll look behind me and I'll fire it at the ground behind me as I'm jumping,
Get back.
and it throws me. See that? Kind of nice. And what do you think happens when you accidentally don't squeeze that left grip enough, or you accidentally let go of it too soon, and you end up firing a rocket at your feet? You end up killing yourself. Additionally, it just didn't feel good squeezing that left grip to fire that as I was firing my rockets, because I found myself firing that grenade thing all the time while I was firing. I would do it a lot, and I didn't want to have to like stop or cycle between fire modes on that trigger. So here's what I've done with Farah, and a lot of the characters are going to, be able to take advantage of this option because of this mapping that we've done. If you go down here and you look secondary fire, which is her jump jet, her useless jump jet, we're going to turn that off because we're using that on jump. And then ability 2, which is E, we're not going to use it there. We are going to go equals from the number row, because equals from the number row is full pull left trigger. So now, when we soft pull left trigger, nothing happens. Except to our gyro, remember soft pull left trigger does a little bit of gyro dampening, which is nice. And it's still nice for Farah because soft pull that, dampen that gyro a little bit, and get a little more accurate with our shots. Very nice. Very, very nice. And then when you full pull, which is something, for her, it's not a function that that like buffers or anything. So you just fire it off, boom, with the left trigger. Because remember, secondary fire, left trigger, full pull, equals on the number row. Bonk. And you can do that. You can fire that off while you're firing your rockets without having to do anything extra. It's right there on your left trigger. And you can use it to get out of sticky situations. And you can use it to stick guys in sticky situations. So that's what you're going to end up doing with this config. Now, let's change. Let's see. I don't think that there's really that much else that you need to change other than those abilities on the characters or heroes where it matters. If we go to a hero like Widowmaker.
One shot. One kill.
Double kill. Triple kill.
C'est si beau.
Double kill. Triple kill.
So, oh, you know what's fun? I just heard her for the first time say it today.
Triple kill. Quadruple kill. Quintuple kill. Sextuple kill.
Cool, huh? She doesn't go higher than that because only 6 enemies
Double kill. Triple kill. Quadruple
in a match. But anyway, so as you can see, her soft pull is ADS, which is obviously what we would want it to be. So, and her full pull is nothing, because for her, we have not mapped equals from the number row to anything for Widowmaker. So when we hit that by full pulling, nothing happens. We don't have to worry. All that happens is it even further decreases. It takes us into that precision aim mode where it's like really nice, like it's real smooth and buttery. I really like it, Oh, it's so nice. I mean, it's not what you would be using if you wanted to like twitch between dudes. I mean, I guess you kind of could, but you would use the soft pull to do that, So, boom. All right.
Target down.
Now, she doesn't. Her. Let me see what her E is. It's that thing, right? Yeah. So that, I mean, that's. I don't spend a lot of time as Widowmaker. So, I mean, maybe if I did, I would have some other tweaks or improvements that I would make. But
Enemies of Talon will be eliminated.
let me see. And then, what's another character that might need? Okay, soldier. So
Double kill.
soft pulling the left trigger right now will fire his rockets. Now, since he's, you know, kind of, I don't know, is he hit scan? I think he's hit scan. Yeah, he's hit scan. So because he's hit scan, it might be nice having a dampened gyro, right? Because it's kind of hard like staying on target when we're moving around and stuff, especially at like a distance and stuff. So if we had that soft pull dampening on that gyro, that might be really nice. And we can do that. And we'll do it the same way that we did with Farah. So we'll go down here, we'll find Soldier 76. His secondary fire, we're going to turn that off. And we're going to make his secondary fire this. So it's actually different than Farah, because with Farah, we changed her, we took that off and disabled it completely because we didn't need it, and we changed ability to equals, ability 2 to equals. And in this case, we're not doing that. We're keeping ability 2 where it is. And we could change that, I guess. You know, I mean, let's see. If we did what... So I'm soft pulling right now. So I'm getting my decreased gyro sensitivity. And then if I full pull, it fires those rockets. And to tell you the truth, you know, those rockets serve like one purpose for me, right? Those are just to kill dudes. You know, you're not going to use them for movement. You're not going to use them for anything like that. So I don't think that it would be that bad if I put those as my E. And I moved my E to my left trigger under my equals. So let's try this. Oh, sorry, bud. I can't join your game right now. All right, let's see. We're going to go... Yeah. Soldier 76. His secondary fire, we're going to make that E. And we're going to make ability 2 equals, which is our left trigger full pull. So, actually... Now that I think about it, it might be even better to not use that there, because no, I kind of need to. Well, because here's what I'm thinking. Does he doesn't have a different weapon, right? Yeah, no. So he doesn't change weapons. I think what yeah, all right. Now this is going to be I wasn't planning on doing this. But let's experiment real quick. So we're going to go into options. We're going to go to Soldier 76. And we're going to disable that one because I don't want anything on that left trigger full pull. Because since he's hit scan, even though he doesn't have ADS, I still want to be able to use all of my different layers and levels of gyro sensitivity. So I want to use my base, high level, high acceleration gyro. I want to use my soft pull dampening, and then I want to use my full pull precision aim gyro where its sensitivity is even lower. And if I associate that with an ability, it's going to fire that ability. And I don't need to do that. Instead, I'll associate that ability with scroll, because he doesn't scroll. Like, he doesn't have additional weapons. So I can put that there instead. And now his secondary fire is on the same trigger as his primary fire. Oh, this is kind of cool. And then I can go like that. Wow. You know, I don't usually play as Soldier. I don't know if I've ever really, like, seriously played as Soldier. And part of the problem was no ADS. I don't know why. It's not that it has to have it, but I just have so much fun. And when there's a character like Ashe, or projectiles, I love rockets. I'm a big, tribes fan from back in the day, and I love rockets. I love projectile rockets. So Pharah was my first love, this game. And part of it was, not really wanting to snipe. And then the other hit scan characters, like
Should have kept your head down.
like this dude not having an ADS, kind of kept me from using him. But I'm almost emulating an ADS, not in the sense of like having, a reticle or anything like that, but in the sense of having increased or decreased sensitivities.
Double kill. Triple kill.
I'm just getting started.
Double kill.
Much better. And stay down.
So, and I have a turbo fire setup. This is very specifically for Ashe, really, because wait, does she? I don't even know if she even needs it. This is something that I carried over from a lot of configs, and it doesn't affect Ashe. I don't know. I know with Pharah, she will just automatically continuously fire her weapon when you hold down the trigger. I don't know if Ashe does. Let me see. Nope, she doesn't. Okay. So when you pull the trigger and you hold it, one shot, right? If you have, and that's under soft pull. Soft pull, fire, medium haptics, very low threshold. Full pull, medium haptics, hold to repeat, turbo on. So this is turbo. So when you soft pull, you're firing like normal. And then when you full pull, you can just hold it down and you're turbo firing, which helps when it comes to the gyro. On a mouse, there's not as much jitter being transmitted into the mouse. You're kind of able to anchor your hand to the mouse, anchor your hand, arm, wrist, elbow, more or less to your desk or your surface. Depending on how you play, you might even use your fingers next to your mouse to sort of like dampen it and slow it down. That's what I used to do. With the Steam controller, especially when using always on gyro, which I do now, there's a lot more movement, sort of arbitrary movement. It doesn't really affect you, like a lot of this, like this kind of stuff. It's like, oh man, how could you ever play like that? Well, you don't play like that. That's when you're looking around or you're talking to the camera or something, things are moving around. But when you're really playing, like you get real focused, like real quick, and you can really like dial in and get locked into what you're firing at. The problem is if you start pulling your trigger like crazy, like you could really like screw up your fire, right? So if you hold full pull on that right trigger,
Double kill.
then it'll keep firing without your finger pulling that trigger, introducing jitter every time you pull the trigger. Does that make sense?
You have to watch out.
It can actually become a problem though using this because you fall out of phase, you fall out of sync. So when she's firing, like when you fire, it takes a few seconds, right? It takes what, 2.5, 3 seconds for her to fire the next shot. When you're responsible for that, when you're thinking about that, and you're like fire, 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 you're able to really synchronize her, and you get into like this sort of like flow. When you're full pulling and it's doing that turbo, sometimes you can get out of sync with it where your sort of like movement system is like move there, and then you move there, but because you're not pulling the trigger, it's automatically doing it. You moved there too soon, or you weren't ready to fire when you moved there. So you actually should have moved here because your character was moving there, you know? And so when you like disconnect, you know, like your agency in pulling that trigger, it can be problematic. So I definitely don't recommend throwing a turbo on all of your fire things because it does help with jitter, right, when you're shooting, but it can mess you up with your, I don't know what the word is for this like sync thing, you know? So and it affects her more than a lot of other characters or other games, you know? Like there's certain kinds of games where it doesn't matter, like it's not a problem. With this, it can be if you're full pulling, you know, and you're waiting for her to like cock the gun and then shoot. And so, yeah, a good thing. And it's also a bad thing. Another bad thing about it is that if you're not very mindful about soft pulling, you might often full pull and it could screw you up if you're not intending to do a turbo thing. If you have a gun, like let's say you're playing and you're your soldier, right? And you've got an automatic weapon and you full pull and it does your turbo mode, you're actually decreasing the rate of fire from that automatic weapon because your turbo is firing slower than the weapon is actually made to fire. So in cases like that, you could drive yourself crazy thinking, how come I can't kill anybody with this damn gun? You know, it's because you're actually firing it way slower. So again, it's one of those things where like right off the bat, you might be like, whoa, that's exciting. All right, I'm going to throw that on everything. And then you do. And then it takes you a month to figure out why things are weird. And then you realize, oh, that's why. So yeah, FYI, you may want to turn the turbo off, or on some games, I'll even put the turbo on like a double pull, right? So a full pull or a regular pull or a soft pull a soft pull will fire, and then a double pull on a full pull will turbo fire. So then you double pull and you hold. I don't do it here because I don't need it here. Like Ash's weapon, I mean, it all makes kind of a good bit of sense, and have a good sense. Like you get a feel for it after a while, you know, like you know how long she's gonna take. So, but it's not something I use all the time. I guess that's what I'm saying. Oh, also, let me show you a trick for the TNT. It won't guarantee you to always shoot them, but almost. Watch. So don't move, right? Throw it and don't move, and then shoot. Okay, so I mean, I got the gyro, the always on. Oh, actually, here, I'll hold this button. Now the always on gyro is off, so no gyro. Oh wait, until. Okay, no, this will work. Wait, will it? Yeah. Now, if you notice, it flies out like straight in front of you. So as long as you don't like move, you'll always be able to shoot it. So we'll do it again. We'll go. Doop.
Here it comes.
Doop. Oh, I was too late. Sorry. All right. One more time after it cools down. So you don't want to be too late, obviously, or it's going to fall down. But the point is, if you just shoot straight ahead, you'll always hit it. You'll always get it. So in the heat of battle, of course, you know, things are different. Things are crazy. You're jumping around a lot and you're throwing at different places, and you don't always have the privilege of holding perfectly still. You know, sometimes you got to throw and look away and then go back and then miss terribly. That's gonna happen, as you can see. But if you boop,
Here it comes.
Double.
just try to like stay forward, you know? Up and down movement is important, especially if you're lobbing it up and you're waiting for it to come down, or if you throw it over something and you're waiting for it to come over on the other side. I probably won't be able to pull this off, but let's see.
Smoke him out of there.
Oh, got stuck. Well. All right, so I think that pretty much covers everything. I mean, if you have questions.
Here it comes.
Oh. If you have questions, of course, keep them to yourselves. Write them down in a journal, then burn it in a barbecue, and then make some food. Eat it up. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Ask me your questions. Let me know your questions. Spend time with the controller. You know, get to know it, get comfortable, mess around. Spend time here in this training. I wouldn't recommend playing a lot of different games. If you're getting very frustrated with the game that you're trying to play a different one. Don't power through frustration. But don't overwhelm yourself, because there's a lot to learn, and it could be a lot for your hands. You know, it could be, even if you get it up here, it could be a lot to translate into action. So give yourself time. And if you play a lot of different games, you know, when you're learning it, it can be overwhelming, because certain functions might not be in different games, and then your hands are like, oh, well, this was the button to do that thing. Oh, wait, no, that was in the other game. You know, that type of thing will happen. When you use one game and you play it a lot, and you learn the Steam controller relative to that game, then you carry a lot of that with you. And then when you go into new games, what I always do is I bring whatever my current most up-to-date config is. A lot of times it's Overwatch. I bring that into the new game, and then I tweak it, and I tweak the game, you know, and it ends up becoming a very unique sort of thing. But I base it off of, you know, the current game that I'm playing as a template. Because certain things like mouse sensitivities, you know, you'll have to tweak those for the game. But a lot of the, you know, a lot of the stuff, you know, things like this, like if you look here, we got our sensitivity there, we got our dampening here, and then we've got additional sensitivity there, and then we got dampening turned off over here. So if you start screwing with your sensitivities in your Steam configurator, you could have a lot of different places that you need to go to make all those changes. You know, if you just change your settings in the game, then all of these settings, you know, are relative to that in-game sensitivity setting. So that's another reason to try and do most of your sensitivity tweaks in the game. Outside, I mean, this is outside of your initial tweaks to get your config set up. You're going to do a lot of that here, but once you've got that dialed in, you got your ratios correct, then you'll adjust stuff in the game, and then your ratios won't get all screwed up. So most of the time. All right, I think that covers this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go browse configs. This was the one. We're going to go share config. A link has been copied to the clipboard. We're going to go Discord. And we are going to drop this bad boy right over here. Paste. Disregard that equals sign. Apologies. So there you go. You guys can download that config. And again, if you download it,
1%.
you know, you're going to have to use Glosk to import, you know, the overlay for this into Steam. I'm not explaining this the right way. Those are not the right words and terms to use. But the point is, you got to use Glosk. And actually, you know what? I could just show you right now. So this is Glosk right here. This is how you'll open it. The first time you launch it, it'll kind of do like an introduction. You know, it'll run you through where everything is. You can disregard this Battlefield 4 thing. You'll go create new. You can give it a name or not. It'll actually, if you populate it with a exe, it'll populate the name, and then you can adjust the name. But like I was saying earlier, I don't associate it with like the EXCs and stuff. I don't use it to launch my game. So you need to title it Overwatch, right? It has to say Overwatch because my config is associated with that title. If you title it something different, my config you won't be able to do it. And you want to enable overlay, enable virtual controllers. Don't use desktop configs. Don't click that. Don't click launch game. No path, no arguments. Save, and then create new, or not create new, save, and then apply. And what'll happen is it will ask you, it'll apply them, and it'll say you need to restart Steam. Do you want to restart Steam? Restart Steam. If you know, yeah, and then when you launch Steam, like I showed you earlier, you'll be able to you'll see that there, and it'll have the icon. You can change the icon in Steam if you want, but it'll have the Glosk icon on it, or no icon. Well, yeah, it'll show up like that. I mean, you can make it pretty and stuff if you want, but when you launch it, it ain't gonna do anything. It's just gonna open that Glosk overlay. It won't be visible unless you hit the Steam button on the controller. And then just go ahead and launch your game and make those adjustments that I was pointing out in the options here. And just to go over them again, basically, I mean, if you've played this before, you may want to go ahead and restore defaults, because if you have certain keybinds that are not set up in my config, you might have problems trying to fire off certain things the way they're set up in mine. And mine's more or less set up for defaults, except for, outside of those tweaks that I showed you. So go ahead and restore defaults. Lower your sensitivity to 7. I'm playing on a 1440p resolution. So if you're playing at 1440p, this may be fine. I mean, you may have to adjust this, a little bit, but I would start there. The lower the better. Start there, 7, and everything should feel okay. Everything will feel weird, probably. Everything will probably feel very, very strange. I think the always-on gyro is going to make your head spin. It's going to feel very weird, and you may want to turn that off. I mean, real quick. Let me just real quick show you. So, a gyro enable button. Here's a great option for beginners. For a lot of people, maybe everyone. Maybe a lot. I mean, for a lot of people. And I did this for years and years and years, up until like what, a month ago, 2 months ago. And I'm never going back, ever. Not that it was horrible, but I'm so in love with this always on gyro thing. My God, I'm so in love with it. And that's not to say it's the best, because it would have been very frustrating. It might have kept me away from the Steam controller if it was always on when I first started, and it might be overwhelming for you as well. So if it is bothersome, then go in here and change it. Change gyro enable button to right pad touch, and make sure gyro button behavior is turn gyro on. You want to set it like that. And what that will mean is when you're in the game, as you can see my cursor up here, it's not moving. Even though I'm moving my controller, the cursor's not moving until I touch. Boop. As soon as I touch the top of that touchpad, the gyro comes on. And now, you've probably heard me talk about this before, but the reason that this is less ideal for me currently is because when you're touching this and you're aiming, my finger is also interfering with the cursor. So it can be kind of frustrating when you're trying to use the gyro and your finger is fucking around with you. Oh, obviously it's not that bad because I have less dexterity with my tip of my index finger than I do with my thumb. It's much less bad with your thumb. But you will still notice a huge difference. And yeah. I really suggest you try it always on. See if you can. I mean, if I could have found a way to make, if I would have made that work sooner, it would have just made my life so much better earlier. So, if you could at least view that as a potential goal to eventually get to a point where you can use always on gyro. Because I can't tell you, I've been editing some of these Overwatch matches, and I'm noticing this function saving my ass so many times, because there's times when I'm under attack and I'm just freaking out, and I'm reloading and I'm turning and I'm running away and I'm going down a stairwell, or I turn into a doorway that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do, because that would have required a high sensitivity gyro, but I would never have had a high sensitivity gyro when I was using right pad touch to activate the gyro, because of the stages and the tiers, and my tiers are now moved down, so I'm able to access the higher sensitivity tier earlier, and because of that, I'm able to have it. Because when I couldn't access that earlier before, I couldn't have it because I needed those other tiers to be the lower sensitivity. And now having it always on means I can have it on very high sensitivity without losing my 2 lower sensitivity options under soft pull and full pull. But anyway, so the way I have it set up now is I have gyro enable button set to Y, and I have gyro button behavior turns gyro off. So as you can see, I'm moving the controller. The mouse is going all over the place. I hit Y, the mouse freezes. So if my hands are all kinked up like this, I can just hit that button, move my hands to a comfortable place, release that button, and everything's golden. That's going to be something that I'm going to be working on, because it definitely feels like if I want to grab that cursor, it almost feels like I'm going to push that button down. I'm going to point my controller up at that cursor, and I'm going to grab it. Now I've got it. And now I'm going to point my controller back towards the center of the screen. Oh, it's down there. I'm going to hit that button. I'm going to point my controller towards the cursor. I'm going to release that button. And now I've got it. And now I can drag it towards the center of the screen. So it's one of those things where it's a mechanical skill that I think will develop over time and will eventually help me not have to be kinking my hands, and be moving my wrists all crazy, because I could just stop, nope, let go and reset it. All right, nope, grab it, reset it. Okay, cool. That kind of thing. So yeah, lower that mouse sensitivity to 7, and be mindful of your secondary fire and your abilities. Every character that you like, if there's a character you like, spend some time just moving these around, experiment with them, and more specifically the secondary fire and the E. I've found that swapping those, even today, swapping that with Soldier 76 ended up being a really great improvement. And then using that equals, that equals is going to be important for you. So I think that's everything. There's probably more. There's a lot of spectate. I have this whole spectator action set here. Don't mess with this. I wouldn't recommend it. Things are crazy in here. I'm gonna finish this one day, and it's gonna be a really cool way of controlling spectator camera functions and all that. But it's not there yet. So for the time being, it's just gonna sit there quietly, minding its own business. What else? Yeah, no, I guess that's it. So we're gonna do a match. Let's see. Leave game. Yes. Hey, God's Hammer's here.
Welcome to Paris.
I think it's working now.
Select your hero.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Oh, nice! Another radio rap.
I'm just a man with a beard. Last time we were here, it was pretty bad. So
You guys, I'm so ready to push this button.
I'm so ready for you to push
This button.
all of them. All of them.
Objective A.
See how quick I can push that button? It's so.
Damn.
Fire in the hole!
Watch out, 76 got 9. Oh, they got off that.
Here it comes! Thanks. Mobility.
Oh no. Me too.
It's so funny to watch you guys' silhouettes go flying across the map.
Damn, Sigma's ready to go.
Oh my gosh.
You made him run away.
That was awesome.
Smoke him out of there!
Ah, 76 figures.
Way to go.
Duplication complete.
Cousin.
Lifting off.
My ultimate is
Fire in the hole!
This will improve your condition. Allow me to repair the damage.
Here it comes! Bob! Do something!
Get behind me down.
Seconds remaining.
Smoke him out of there!
Get into position.
my ultimate is charged.
Fire in the hole!
There's only one way.
They're on the road! Get them out of there mid-
This will heal you. Get into position.
Fire in the hole!
Oh, we got this, you guys.
Bob!
We got it
Do
right where we
something!
want.
Shit.
Get into position.
Here it comes!
Mine is coming on the right side.
Group up here.
Not yet.
Group up.
Fire in the hole! Looking on! Thanks.
This will heal you. I require assistance.
Surrender.
I will.
Here it comes! Smoke him out of there!
Oh, soldier.
Allow me to repair the damage.
Soldier ran away.
Fire in the hole!
Damn it.
Taking off. Became a hole.
Neil?
Duplicating minecart.
Experience tranquility.
I got it.
60 seconds remaining.
Where are they?
Here it comes.
Pass this force.
Smoke them out.
30 seconds remaining.
Our national victory records.
They're coming off the right.
Oh, shoot. That's not good.
10 seconds.
Time to change things up.
Overtime.
Here it comes.
Oh, they must be so mad.
Well done, you guys.
Or no, wow.
Way to go, everybody. Well, it's that time again. Time for us to shut it down. But before we go, I wanted to thank you for listening to me ramble on about the Steam controller. Because if I'm being completely honest, I might have more fun talking about it than I do using it. It's so weird. Anyway, I appreciate you guys hanging out. speedylee, Godspeed on your journey with the Steam controller. I will be here encouraging you, supporting you along the way, and hopefully playing with you in Overwatch. In fact, if there's anyone else who's curious about either getting into Overwatch, getting back into Overwatch, or using a Steam controller, well, now's the perfect time for any of those things. Because we've got this. Let's do this. We can make some custom matches, just, fun stuff. Nothing competitive, just fun stuff so people can get used to the controls and ask their questions and play with other Steam controller players. Wouldn't that be crazy? Well, thanks for hanging out. I hope you had a good night. I hope you learned something, and I hope you weren't too bored. But either way, thanks, and I'll see you tomorrow.